This podcast has been made possible by Ledge.
Hey, this is Ryan Gwillem, CFO of Brunswick Corporation, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 918.
I think the next big piece, and it's a hot topic, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, the potential of generative AI within our applications, within our product itself. How can it support our organization and provide us quicker insights to be able to do sometimes management by exception for certain areas where you only jump in when you're needed and you don't worry about the stuff when it's working right. And then of course, can we reduce leveraging some of that AI functionality to reduce some of the transactional aspects of the jobs so they can be a little bit more strategic focused.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with CFO Ken Bowles of WilsonHCG. Back in 2001, the new finance recruits roaming the corridors of General Electric Corp prodded themselves along as they confronted the everyday challenges of acclimating to GE's enduring corporate culture. This was perhaps especially true for finance analyst Ken Bowles, who perhaps faced a more daunting cultural challenge than most of GE's new finance recruits. Turn back the clock perhaps only a year or two earlier, and Bowles was based in South Korea as a member of the U.S. Army's 177th Finance Battalion, a formation tasked with supporting the Army's 2nd Infantry Division. After 5 years in the Army and 15 with General Electric, we talked to CFO Ken Bowles about some of the transitions that mattered along his path to the CFO office. We begin after this. Does your finance team struggle with routine tasks like reconciliation and manually managing multiple bank accounts? Many tech companies today have complex finance operations and massive amounts of data in different disconnected silos. Whether you're reconciling across 6 different payment processors or between NetSuite and the bank, closing the books can be a nightmare. Ledge has found a better way. Ledge is a finance operations platform that connects all your banking, payment, and accounting systems into one unified platform. Ledge automates revenue reconciliation across all systems, right down to the transaction level, and instantly matches payments, invoices, refunds, chargebacks, or any other transaction. Ledge gives you real-time visibility into your cash position across all accounts and alerts you about issues and at-risk funds in real time, so you can act in real time. And get this, Ledge requires no engineering resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack so you can get set up instantly. Ledge puts finance teams back in control. Learn more at ledge.co. Hello, we're speaking with Ken Bowles, CFO of WilsonHCG. Ken, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, Ken, as always, we begin by asking you to look back for us, and we're hoping you'd share some of those experiences you feel prepared you for the role as you look back in time. What comes to mind?
Yeah, I've probably got a little bit of a different background than some of the other CFOs you've spoken with. I started my career after college actually in the military. I was a finance officer in the military, spent some time in South Korea and in South Carolina at the Army Finance School. And one of the big things that kind of helped me, in my career from that experience is that you work with people from all different backgrounds, right? All different upbringings. And so you learn to try to get the most out of people and where they best serve the organization and where they best serve the team. And so it was a great experience. You obviously get to see the world and get to do different types of things. But you also get, as a younger person, you get thrown into leadership positions right away. right? And so it's kind of sink or swim, and the military is really great at doing that.
How did you get flagged for finance? Is it something that you personally had to sort of maneuver yourself to, or did the opportunity sort of come your way?
Yeah, it's I did ROTC in college, and if you do really well within ROTC and your performance, you get to pick the branches that you want to associate with. The finance corps at that time only had about 300 officers in the entire army, so it is a little bit difficult to get in, and I was lucky enough. I picked that as my first choice and was lucky enough to get assigned it. So it's
And how is the finance core organized? Is it? And again, you mentioned I believe you said Korea. I mean, is there a finance person that oversees the region, or is it organized differently?
It's set up, yeah. It's set up like in just like battalions and different units, very similar military structure, but they support different units in different areas. So, like when I was in Korea, was with the 177th Finance Battalion that supported the 2nd Infantry Division. So we would do all the funding and the budgeting and payroll and all the different any of those finance money activities that you'd see. We were there to support the organization, support the base, and doing that. So.
And again, did you have to take an initial exam? Did they say, "Okay, sure, we'd love to have you, but here we administer this exam, and this is your doorway of entry into the finance"?
Yeah, no exam like that, but you do go through an officer basic course and a training course done to learn about the intricacies of what there is in Army finance.
And who were your peers? You did a nice job when you explained how people come from all different backgrounds, but
Yeah.
maybe just you personally. I mean, who were your peers? Were they other just like you, soldiers just like you, or?
Yeah, we worked with when I was in Korea. We different soldiers from all different ranks, all the way on the enlisted side to different officers all throughout the organization. We also in Korea, luckily, I got to work with some of the Korean augmentees, so Korean military people that worked alongside us. So that was a really great experience as well to learn a little about the culture and just work alongside those people when you're supporting them in their country as well.
Did you have the same sort of reputation that sometimes finance gets, as in the CFO? No, I mean, the finance guys just stepped into the meeting. I mean, is this what happens in the? I would imagine it does.
It's very similar, very 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 same reputation. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, thank you for giving us a little extra detail there. I couldn't resist, but please continue on if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the next big thing throughout finance careers, you take on different opportunities, right? Different types of jobs. I was lucky. I after the military, I joined GE. I joined it at that time was called GE Aircraft Engines, which is out of Cincinnati now. It's aviation or aerospace. They keep changing the name. But I started out there in cost accounting, financial analyst, and kind of worked my way up. The big thing for me, I think, and this is for every person out there, every finance person out there that's trying to make their way into a CFO role, is taking an FP&A role. I think is extremely important. So an FP&A role gives you that great foundation. It's one of those jobs that you get to see everything across the business. You're working through the budgeting process. You're working through the analysis. You're working through the reporting. You get involved in every aspect and you see how things work together. I think a lot of times you go down the accounting path and you kind of lose the strategic aspect of it. So I think having that accounting experience is always a good foundation, but taking on those FP&A roles gives you that strategic insight to what's going on within the business itself, so you can progress to that
Any
next level.
any cultural shock there or simulation, or would you tell us GE's not unlike the Army in some ways?
Yeah.
But no.
No, it's always a shock. Going from the military, I mean, anyone that talks to you about that transition, going from the military into a corporate job is definitely different. It's one of those things, particularly back when I did it. It's you have to ask people to do things, not tell them, right? So there's that different mentality. But no, GE was great, a really great experience, and I mean, I'll mention it a couple times throughout. I mean, I spent 15 years of my career there, so a lot did happen there. So
It's an interesting place to be at that point in time. You join, I'll say, in 2000 before. I think Jack Welch is still there a number of months.
He was still there.
But
Yep.
Immelt steps in, and of course, it's getting a lot of attention with that succession happening. And of course, we know, the economic downturn is.
Yeah.
Let me see if that was that before you exited?
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
No, yeah, it was before I exited. So went through kind of 08, 09, all that.
And they
So
go into a transformational phase where I'll let you share some details there, but you stuck with a number of GE entities throughout. Am I right
yeah.
about that? Give us
Oh, definitely.
some sense of what transpired as you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. You really saw, a lot of strategic thinking across the organization when it comes to what finance people can do to support an organization during that time. When times get tough, it's always everybody's tightening the belts. There's always different things you look at, and I'll talk a little bit about this too around, certain decisions that get made, for different types of companies on when they when it comes to quarterly results versus long-term thoughts. But I was lucky enough to kind of stick through it. I mean, the organization did a really great job, made it through it, and there were some scary moments. I mean, you read about it and heard about it at the times with GE, but I think they did a good job getting through the moment. And then I think afterwards, I think there was a little bit of a different direction, and a little bit of loss of focus on where we needed to be strategically. I moved on from aircraft engine to a different business called GE Nuclear, which not many people even knew. GE does nuclear still. It was a joint venture at the time, and a really great opportunity, great business, and then got to spend some time in a division called GE Fanic, or GE Intelligent Platforms, which was manufactured high tech hardware and software.
Now, were any of these spun off, or were they? Were
They have
they?
been spun off since.
Yeah.
So, Intelligent Platforms now got spun off into a couple different pieces. They went with the software division, and then they went to, I believe, Emerson brought a piece of them as well. So,
But that was part of your world then. When you got attached to maybe GE Nuclear or GE Intelligent Platforms, you knew the fate of the organization could be something very different from the one you joined. Like it could be part of a transaction, it could be spun off, it could be sold, or I mean, there was some uncertainty, or no?
well, there always is. I mean, those divisions themselves a little bit standalone, compared to like an aviation or a healthcare. So there was always that opportunity, that it could happen. I think the great thing about it is they were all great businesses in their own. It's interesting within a big company like that. You have these smaller companies, which is all relative. Like smaller company that makes multi-billion dollars is not really that small, but they do kind of you create the community, you create the environment, and they act like a standalone entity and a standalone business within a bigger company. So
I just want to share in large organizations, sometimes titles, don't mean as much to the outside world, but you were, it looks like, as you described, an FP&A executive through and through. You were manager FP&A at Global Nuclear Fuel. You were commercial finance manager for GE Nuclear Energy. You were a manager of financial planning originally at the Intelligent Platform, but then you climb the ranks and you become CFO of their software and services organization, and then CFO of GE
yeah,
Intelligent Platforms. How am I doing? Am I my
yeah,
shorthand okay?
yes, you got it, you got it.
GE at that time, do you visit the mother planet? Do they take you back to the mothership, and are there finance offsites, or I'm just curious about how you compared your professional life to your peers within that sprawling finance organization.
Yeah, I mean, the one great thing about GE is that there were always people out there to help you, and there was always connections to be made. It's such a large organization. A lot of people moved around within the GE business itself, and so you had a lot of connections. We did have offsites and sessions. We went to Crotonville back then, when they had Crotonville, and did a lot of management sessions and management and leadership training and things like that. So you got to experience that piece of it. I was part of an experienced finance leaders program at the time. And so you got to meet other finance leaders across the globe and across the organization. So that was one great thing. I mean, one of the great things about GE at the time, is you got to experience all of those types of things and work with different people. I mean, the great thing about GE, and probably different than some of the other standalone businesses I was with before, is that if you ever had a problem, there was always somebody that experienced it. So you could always reach out to someone across the organization and say, hey, this is going on. What's your insight? Can you help? What have you experienced previously? And so and sometimes you lose that when you go into a standalone company. You move on to a private equity firm or private equity owned company, and sometimes you're on your own a little bit. And so you try to reach out to the community when you experience that.
So, if I understand correctly, you had roughly about 4 years in the military, and is it 15 years that span all of the GE entities you were
Yeah,
involved with? Wow. Okay. So,
yeah,
nearly 20 years all
yeah.
totaled. And I just use that number because when you do leave GE, it looks like you enter sort of a senior CFO role. And is that were you recruited, or can you fill us in a little bit
Yeah.
when you finally decide to do it?
When you're married, and we all know this in family life. My wife had got an opportunity in her field to work down in Tampa, Florida. And so GE was great. They allowed me to move down there. I traveled back and forth. But eventually, as always, right, you got to okay, you got to come back. We need you to do this role. We want you to take a new opportunity. And to be honest with you, we liked the area, we liked the community, and I decided it's been 15 years. Maybe it's time for something different, to try something different. I was lucky enough to, when I was down here, start to embed myself in the finance community and meet different leaders and different people. It's a very burgeoning tech space down here in Tampa, Florida, and I was lucky enough to meet, a CFO that knew some people, a company that was looking for a CFO, and a great culture, great background, and was lucky enough to get the opportunity with a company called Tribridge at the time.
What was the
So
nature of that company's markets? What did they do?
it, yeah, they were a software, big Microsoft partner, software and cloud company. Developed a hybrid cloud model and did a lot of Microsoft implementations, but also developed their own software products as well.
At the same time, I couldn't doubt you were still sort of came in the middle of your GE experience, but the nuclear tour of duty there. I mean, that's quite a specialization. I was like, maybe he could have jumped to some sort of nuclear related. And was there interest? I would have thought there would be, just given your background.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely a different type of business, and it was one of those ones that obviously within the energy portfolio, but within the U.S. not a lot of nuclear energy activity going on. So a lot of it was we created nuclear fuel bundles, so to act the fuel for the reactors. So a lot of it was around that, and it was a joint venture. So very interesting setup and structure. It was a joint venture between Hitachi and Toshiba at the time and GE, and so there was interest in there. It was a very interesting field. You learn a lot about the different types of accounting associated with that type of construction and business. But my heart has always been in the tech space, and so I decided to kind of shift back to that. So,
Well, your first CFO tour of duty lasts 3 years, and before we jump to WilsonHCG, which we're about to do, I have one more question though. It's too, and I always like
sure.
to ask of GE folks because I know that they make communications an important part of your management development. What about you? Was there a presentation in the past during your GE years where you were really tapped on the shoulder and say, okay, I want you to step up and deliver this? And as you mentioned Crotonville to us, but I've got to believe there must have been something that, whether it was a client presentation that someone asked the finance team to become involved in. I don't know what it might have been. Whether it was a joint venture discussion that, possibilities, I don't know. Anything could be more.
Oh no, I mean, again, it's one of those organizations where you get everybody is kind of in it all, and you're going to jump in where you needed. I was asked one time, interestingly enough, we had a client presentation trying to close a transaction with a client. It was coming down to finance type arrangements, and ended up flew to the Netherlands, sat with this company, actually flew in, like rested for like probably 2 hours, had the meeting, worked through all the details of it, signed off on the contract, got it closed, which was fantastic, a very large one for the business itself, and then slept for 2 hours and got back on the plane and went home. So it's you jump in where you're needed, and depending upon what's going on, every one of us is there to help out. And it's not, as a finance person, you're kind of like, everybody thinks you just stick in the background, you look at the accounting, you do the numbers, but that role has changed over the years.
All right, so let's find out about Wilson HCG. Tell us about this company. What does it do, and what are its offerings today?
Sure. Yeah. So WilsonHCG is a total talent solution provider. So recruiting. We're a global recruiting firm. We're one of the most well-known brands within recruiting. We help companies just hire the right type of people, right? So and the right type of people to achieve their business objectives. Our differentiator, it's our big thing, is it's on quality. We are a quality oriented organization. We are not a low cost type company. We are out there to solve your problems, and give you the best result. For us, it's all about the quality of hire. We know people are just so important. They're a big part of your organization. They're most important part of every organization. And so for us, it's making sure that we can get the right types of people. We do everything from RPO. Our big thing is recruitment process outsourcing, which is RPO. We also do exec search, and staffing, contingent talent type staffing, as well as consulting and tech consulting. And we also own a software company as well. So it does labor market intelligence.
And you've been there. It's an interesting period because, let's see, you arrived in 2018. You're through COVID. So you're there 5 years, but right in the middle is COVID. Can has the talent marketplace changed? Can you tell us a little bit about what maybe you have observed as we went through it, and how the market is different in some respects today? Why?
Yeah, it's interesting time. I mean, we saw it all we saw different things happening with different companies. We are lucky enough to be very diverse in the industries that we serve. And so you could see how companies responded to what happened. And on both sides, before it, while it was happening, and then after everything kind of opened back up. It's certain ones responded better. Some companies took it as an opportunity to right size their organization, not making massive cuts or anything like that, but to strategically make the adjustments within their organization. But to do it with a more patient, more stable approach. Others went the complete opposite and just cut a bunch of people, stopped hiring, stopped backfilling, and did all that. And those are the companies that, when it came out of it, were like scrambling for people and scrambling, and they were like, "Hey, we need to hire 1,500 people in 2 months," type of organizations, which really disrupted the market, and we've all seen it, right? It was interesting for us recruiters. Obviously, our bread and butter. And the desire for recruiters coming out of COVID was astronomical. It drove up wages, drove up cost for everyone across the organization. And because you had a lot of companies that were like, we need to hire a lot of people, so we got to go out and bunch of recruiters. So that wage inflation that was associated with that was drastic. And but then you're seeing now, which is kind of that opposite of, things are slowing down and it's going the other way. And so we saw that the companies that were just a little bit more responsible and stable made it through it no problem. When they came out of it, there wasn't the crazy hiring, there wasn't the drastic hiring, and they're in a much better position operationally and financially than some of the ones that did the peaks and valleys. And so that was interesting to see, because with all those different industries, you definitely saw which ones responded better. So, and tech did not respond very well. So.
Is this company, it's privately owned, but is it private equity, or is there?
It's private equity. Yeah, it is private equity. So 3i out of London is our private equity.
Okay. Are there any founders still involved, or is it?
Yeah, the founder is still the CEO. He's been there the entire time. It's, great. John Wilson does a great job leading the organization. Really is really well known throughout the recruiting space and the talent space. He's loving it. So,
did the private equity transaction happen since you arrived, or was it before? Or?
Yeah, yes, it did. So we actually Right before I joined, they had moved to one private equity firm, which was CIP Capital. And then while I was there, we transitioned to 3i. So went through that process as well. Yeah.
Tell us something about your lines of sight into the organization then. I mean, what are the numbers that matter to you? And this has a lot to do with the nature of this business. So please don't hesitate to give us a little extra detail about, executive recruiting business.
So, I mean, for us, we're services based business, right? It's people. So the big thing for us is productivity and utilization. How are we using our resources across the organization? Are we getting the most value out of them? We also look, because of the different components. We look at revenue per recruiter and productivity per recruiter. Gives you both sides, gives you the top line, gives you the profitability, and that enables us to kind of make sure we're structuring the support teams for each one of our clients the best way, and optimizing that. It's a mix of teams that support our clients, anywhere from what we call talent and administrative coordinators to sourcers to recruiters, and different levels of recruiters. The interesting thing is that there are different skill sets across that as well. So people that can recruit technology people versus salespeople versus HR. And so for that, it's really is those two metrics. You're looking at the revenue per recruiter and the productivity utilization. So
We've been talking a lot to some of the SaaS folks about real-time data. Is that part of your world?
Yeah.
Is there any reason you want to get the numbers quicker, sooner? You want them, visible now? How would that change what you do?
Yeah, I would say on the financial side, it's not as quick, right? So I don't need the financial results as fast as probably some of the other ones do. But there's different types of data that we look at. So I mean, one of the reasons we bought this company called Claro, it's a labor market intelligence tool, was to understand that supply and demand and how that's changing throughout the time. And so the big thing about this platform was that it was very up to date versus some of the other tools that were out there. You cannot use BLS data. You cannot use some of those numbers that are thrown out there that we look at. They're so old. If you're making a decision based on that, you're behind the times. So for us, that was extremely important. We can see when companies start to hire. We can see when they slow down. We can see different industries, and we see that the differences between that supply and demand level. So if you have a company that's looking to hire certain types of roles within Louisville, Kentucky, and you know what, there's only 5 of those people in Louisville, Kentucky, you are going to struggle to fill those types of roles. We look at that, and that's extremely helpful for us in making the decisions, both for our clients, but also for us as well, and where we put our teams and our people.
Yeah, that acquisition was made also during your tenure, and can you share with us? I mean, were you involved with it? And again, not to make a sort of an obvious assumption, you came from GE Intelligent Platforms. Is this part of the world you were familiar with?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, being a software firm, and my background in both the software side and technology side, it's under my purview right now as well. So I work with them on a day-to-day basis. But yes, I was heavily involved in the acquisition, working with the founder of that company to get through that transaction. And I work with him now on an ongoing basis as we continue to invest in that business and structure it and commercialize the product a little bit better as well.
Were there other? I mean, was this kind of a unique opportunity, or will this company continue to grow? Are you currently looking at other acquisitions?
Yeah, we continue to look at acquisitions. We did another one earlier this year. A company out of North Carolina called Personify. It was a recruiting firm in the healthcare space to expand that industry expertise. So yeah, we continuously look for different opportunities. Recruiting is a big one. Technology is another one that we look at. Again, technology is we're very specific in where we target on that side. But consulting is another one. Companies out there now need a lot of help when it comes to the HR space and the HR tech space. Anyone that knows about HR tech knows that there's tons of companies. There's tons of technology out there. Some of them make it through, some of them don't make it. And so we have an organization that their whole focus is looking at everything that's out there and making recommendations back to our clients on what's the best solution to help them out.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about AI in this space as well, in the HR tech space, as you probably well know. And the recruitment function is one that's supposed to be AI is going to do some amazing things there. I haven't followed it all that closely, but am I wrong about that? Or is there a lot of discussion around?
Yeah, it's going to be extremely helpful. I mean, we're looking at it now across the board. Within our Claro business, obviously leveraging AI for reporting and insight to, be able to take large amounts of data and provide you some, on-demand insight into some of the reports and some of the results. We're looking at it in the recruiting space as well. Can you leverage something like a chat GPT to develop more contextual communications out to candidates? Right. And so, and then of course, within the back office and finance and HR and legal, taking a look and seeing where we can leverage that as well. It's pretty neat functionality, the generative AI, on top of just the traditional machine learning and RPA and those types of things as well. So yeah, it's going to make a big impact for us. The thing with every type of technology is figuring out where is it actually going to create value, versus just be something neat. So that's always the thing that we're trying to pay attention to. So
Just to look at your finance function on your wish list, FP&A people are always a nice addition. Is that one area where if you had to make a hire, you'd love it to be an FP&A, or would you look at the world differently?
Yeah, no, I have a great FP&A leader right now, which I'm lucky to have. He came over from one of my other prior businesses, but we continue to invest in that area. We're a global business, so we continue to need. And if I'm going to invest in a person, I want to make sure that it's an FP&A person within a region. We always have to have the controller. We always have to have the accounting background. But in order to help drive growth and really provide that business partner, I like to put an FP&A person in some of those regions. So
let me just ask, and I asked the metrics question earlier, but I'm curious if you have a dashboard that just for your finance team or for management, and what exactly pops up on it when people open it up? What are the numbers? What are you making visible?
Yeah, so we obviously report on a very frequent basis to our private equity firm, but we do have some dashboarding as well within our systems. A lot of it is around revenue growth, where it's coming from, what clients are driving the most most revenue, and then of course the profitability, taking a look at where our variable costs are, and then of course cash is king. So monitoring that we monitor that on a daily basis just to see kind of what's going on, where the usage and the outflows go.
All of what we hear about having the private equity investor transaction come down, the before and after, what you should expect, what you deal with day to day. What are some of the myths about it? What didn't come to be the way certain folks might have predicted for you?
You're talking about just the private equity relationship, or just
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I've actually been lucky. I mean, again, there's always nuances to it. When I was with Tribridge, it was private equity owned. We had a great firm as well, very, very partnering firm. And when I joined WilsonHCG, same thing with CIP Capital, very great partners. And that's one of the things that we look for. I won't take a job at a private equity firm where they have an operating partner, right? My view on the operating partners is, you're hiring, you have management and leaders to make decisions. So if you don't believe in the leaders, then replace the leaders, right? You don't need to add in a whole nother layer to it. So that is just something that has been great in the firms that I've worked with. And I think different ones are different, right? Some of them like to be hands-on and really help you. Some of them are going to leave you alone. And I think one of the things that this new and 3i has done a great job in supporting us is they'll be hands-on when we need them, and they'll jump in and help. And then when we don't, they'll take a step back and kind of let us do our thing. So I've been lucky. I haven't had a bad experience yet with private equity. So it's probably been different than some of the other ones that are out there, because I've talked to a lot of people. You sometimes get that bad one. But my experiences have all been extremely positive, which is great.
Great. Thank you for some insight there. Appreciate that. We're now up to our finance strategic moment question, where we ask you to share just one moment of insight that you experienced along the way during your career, one that your unique lines of sight allowed you to see an opportunity. Maybe it was a risk, something that made you respond, perhaps. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Is it okay if I do too?
Please.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one around not specifically finance, but around leadership, and then the second one truly around finance. I think the one big thing, and this kind of goes back to coming out of the military and transitioning from military to the corporate world. I spent a lot of time, obviously. Went to college, learned a lot about different types of finance, got my MBA while I was in the military at the University of South Carolina when I was there. But I didn't have the corporate experience, right? I didn't have that background. And so going into, interviews and going out to try to find a new opportunity when I was going to transition can be difficult. And it can be difficult for military people. A lot of the skills that you learn in the military, don't seem transferable, right? And so it's a lot of explaining on what you do and how does that apply to different types of job, particularly when you get into something like finance versus just general leadership or business management or things like that. So I was lucky enough to kind of meet a CFO at GE during that process that was willing to take a chance on me, right? And that is something that I think every one of us within the finance organization needs to realize, that you're going to have people within that organization and people that support you that are going to come from different backgrounds. It's not going to be always cookie cutter, and you need to kind of take the chance on some people and make it work out. And I was lucky enough. It obviously worked out for them. I spent 15 years there, and it worked out for me because I got to learn a lot and had a great experience there, and I think did a great job. So I think that's one thing that I've tried to do throughout my career is just understand that regardless of the background, make sure you're bringing the right people into your organization. I've hired people that have history backgrounds and not a finance degree. I've hired people that have come up from all the way from being an admin assistant into finance roles. And if they're smart and they're driven, they're going to be successful for you. And so sometimes take a chance. I think going into the pure finance moment, and I kind of mentioned this earlier as well. Moving from a big public company to a private equity backed, private company, your view on results are different, right? Coming up, a public company, a big company like GE, very quarterly focused. Private equity firms, much longer horizon, very more strategic focused. And so I think that big moment for me was just realizing that, truly, even on public companies and even, with private companies, that finance leaders, you can sometimes get trapped into focusing purely on those short-term results, right? The quarterly results, the performance versus making, long-term strategic based decisions. And we've all seen that. You see that with, some of the poor decisions that some of the companies have made even recently, right? And companies that do very large layoffs, right? You've seen the studies on layoffs, and we've all seen the studies on layoffs. Yes, it's a really great short-term fix for a profitability problem and a performance problem, but in the end, you end up hiring a lot of those roles back, paying more for those roles, and you end up spending more in the long run. And so, trying to take a look at those decisions in a much longer horizon is something that I have spent my time doing, and been lucky enough to have leaders and work with teams that believe in that as well. Because I think you're going to make, as a CFO, a much different decision if you're not so much worried about the quarter result versus the longer term return for shareholders and investors. And so it's one of those experiences that I think every one of us should learn. And it goes beyond just even finance or as a CFO, it's business leaders as well. It's, don't, yes, it's important, but don't make every decision just purely on the quarterly result, and really trying to look at how that impacts the business in the long term. Because your plan is to be there for a while and for a long time, not to be there just for a quarter.
From episode 888, this is CFO Palo Poma of Lamborghini.
In our business, the product development lasts from 18 months to 5 years, and the life cycle another 9 years. So it's a quite a long period of time. So it's crucial to work in the proper time on product marginality to deliver the product, and we cannot fail on products. 10 years ago, the company was a 200 million company turnover. Last year, we broke the threshold of the 2 billions, scoring almost 2.4 billion euros turnover, which is an amazing times 10 growth in the top line, but even more in terms of profitability.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back to the first 30 or 60 days you stepped into a CFO role for the first time. And again, coming out of GE, very different environment. What is that piece of advice? If you could go back in time and just tell yourself something that first 30 or 60 days, what is the advice you would give to that person?
Yeah, I would say, accept everything that's thrown at you. Every opportunity. Being a CFO and being a finance leader, you're going to be involved in things beyond just the accounting, beyond just the finance. And so when you're joining an organization, get involved, get out there, walk around, learn about the business itself versus just the back office and just the finance piece of it, and listen to your gut. The focus is always going to be on the numbers, but like I mentioned earlier, it's always important to look at the longer term implications. And that means even considering impacts that might be immediately negative, but longer term productive. And that can be both on just the business itself, but also on your personal side. So manage your personal life as well, not just focusing purely on the business success.
Nice. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. We're wondering if there's some habit that you have that you're known for, or maybe part of a daily routine, something you're known for. What sets you apart? Anything?
Yeah, I think I'm probably a little bit different than some of the CFOs out there. I am my focus purely isn't on the numbers. It's truly on the business. So on top of that, I am very open with my team. I don't believe in the hierarchy. And so I will talk to every one of the people individuals on my team. We're all one team. And so we're all running in the right same direction. And so I keep my, open door, nowadays, open Zoom, open Teams, for anyone to be able to reach out to me. And that goes from people in the finance organization, all throughout our business. We just see it. And this is a value within WilsonHCG as well, that it's your people come first, right? And so I want to make sure that my teams are getting the most support that they need to be successful and everything they need to be successful. And that goes back to kind of my kind of belief in servant leadership. And so I'm just a very approachable person. I have a very open door policy. There are no bad ideas, and I take ideas from everyone across the organization.
Were you a servant leader sort of champion at GE, or were you of a different mind then?
I really learned it. Again, I learned more about it when I joined Tribridge and didn't realize I was already doing a lot of those things. So it's like, coming from my background in the military, that is very servant leader focused, the military itself. And so, having that background and progressing through GE, and then actually, joining Tribridge, the CEO was a big proponent of servant leadership. And, as I kind of read more about it, learned more about it, I realized, well, you know what, you've been doing this for the last 20 years. So it's, but I try to push it now, and it's a big focus. And it's when I join companies, and it's one of the things I look for. It's what is that culture, and do you put your people first, or not? And if we've all worked at companies where the people are second, or the people are not treated as well, those businesses can be successful, but they burn through a lot of people. But those that take care of their people, if you do it the right way, they're going to take your team members are going to take care of the business, and your business is going to be successful.
Well, We always like to ask for a book recommendation. Don't know if it doesn't have to be a business book. Might be something that just inspired you or something you escaped with. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, Servant Leadership by Robert Greenleaf. It's a very old book, not super long, but and there's a lot of tons of books on servant leadership, but I think that's a great one. Kind of gives you that foundation. The one big thing on there is being a servant first and a leader second, right? And so that's just something that I value a lot. So.
Well, we're up to our final question where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. We're wondering what your priorities are for the coming 12 months as a CFO. What are your CFO priorities?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably there's two. So one is obviously business focused. You're really understanding what's going to happen in the market and trying to work through that. It is a challenging time now for all different types of companies. So, working through that and positioning our company to be successful as we come out of that turn. I think the next big piece, and it's a hot topic, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, the potential of generative AI within our applications, within our product itself. How can it support our organization and provide us quicker insights to be able to do sometimes management by exception for certain areas where you only jump in when you're needed and you don't worry about the stuff when it's working right. And then, of course, can we reduce leveraging some of that AI functionality to reduce some of the transactional aspects of the jobs so they can be a little bit more strategic focused.
Ken Bowles, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.